town?
Oh man, Michelle, my partner, she's a plant obsessed. I feel like anytime we go anywhere, she comes home with plants. So I'm like trying to put a stop to it because I don't know. There's a limit. Like we've got so many plants everywhere in the house. Like I don't know if we're gonna be able to keep them all alive.
Did you call her your partner?
Great air. Yeah.
Oh, is she your wife?
I mean, technically we're not married yet, but we've been together for like 7 years. So it feels weird to call her my girlfriend, I guess.
Oh, right. Partner's more weird.
The wedding's coming up very soon.
Weird.
Yeah, I mean, well, we were meant to get married last summer, but the lockdowns stopped everything. You weren't allowed to have large gatherings, obviously. So we could have just gotten kind of courthouse married, but neither of us have family on Vancouver Island. So we're kind of bringing people over to come see us. And we just kind of felt like if the wedding's not there, if I'm just inviting people over for a party, lose a few people. So we figured we'd just delay the wedding and we postponed for this summer. So yeah, September 18th is when we're having people and
so
getting married.
So you had a baby out of wedlock.
We did. Heathens.
Me too.
Attaboy. Don't worry about it. I'm sure it'll be fine.
I'm sure it's so fun.
I'm sure your soul will be safe.
My kid will ask me, when did you get married? And then I'll show him a picture. I'm like, dude, you were at the wedding. He's all, that's me? I'm like, yeah, you were too. You know, he's like, oh, fuck. But
how old are your kids now?
Yet. 4. I have 2 4-year-olds and a 6-year-old.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, you were there, buddy. It'll be the same for us. Like he'll be 2 months old, 3 months old. So.
What's your son's name, Patrick?
Owen.
And who named him?
Both of us. It took a long time. It's funny. We had reached a consensus on a girl's name almost right away. And then, I don't know, I found boy names much harder. And, we were kind of playing with a few. We wanted to make a name that was pretty much the same in French English, at least, or would be easy to say in French, because we want to try to have our kids speaking French pretty early. So
smart. We
kind of abandoned that a little bit for the boy's name. The girl's name was a little bit nicer in French. So who knows? Maybe with the next one we'll have a girl and we'll get to use that one.
Oh, and what was that one?
I won't say it because I don't want someone to take it.
Ah, smart.
I might have just zoned out for a second. Did you guys wait on the gender, or did you know the gender ahead of time?
I think it's sex. I think the term is sex. Gender is.
It would be sex.
Head, yeah. Brian. People make up gender. Gender is just in your head.
Yeah. Well, did you know if it was going to be a boy or a girl?
My sex. Ah, there you go.
We did know. It's kind of funny. So Michelle was she's a family doctor. She was doing rotations out of town when we got our first ultrasound, I guess, the sexing ultrasound. And she was going to find out and then just going to put it in an envelope. And then when she came home, we were going to find out together. But the ultrasound technician basically just put the probe on her belly, and it was like full frontal right away, just right on the sweet spot, and like a full dick shot. And so they both just kind of looked at each other like, well, it's boy. And so she FaceTimed me like while she was in the appointment, and they just showed me the ultrasound and said like it didn't seem fair for her to know and a week before I did. So she just sort of FaceTimed me in, and I got to be a part of it. But yeah, it was kind of funny. I feel like some people might not know what they were looking at. But obviously she reads ultrasounds and does stuff like that herself, so it was pretty evident right away. So yeah, sort of surprise ruined, but if it was ever going to happen to anybody, it was fine because we wanted to know anyway.
Your wife's a physician?
Yeah.
Is she a pediatrician?
No, she's a family doctor. She's a family doctor. She has like special interest in, she does a lot of obstetrics and gynecology, and she does some emerge.
When we got the ultrasound for my boys, I was like, oh my God, his dick is huge. And the lady's like, no, that's his nose. I was like, that makes sense. That makes sense. How long has she been a doctor?
Well, so she technically 2 years, I guess. She just finished her residency. So so when we got pregnant, we got kind of with the plan that we would try to have the baby during residency, because the way it works here, I don't know if it's the same in the US, but residents have a union, so you're technically an employee and you get benefits. You could get paid mat leave for a certain period, and which I believe is significantly longer in Canada than it is in the US. But so the plan was to try to have the baby during her residency window, and we just made it. Like, basically, she delivered the baby a month before her residency was done. And so technically she's still a resident. She's on mat leave as a resident, but when she's done her maternity leave, she'll basically just be done. Like, the program has said, you've done all your requirements and you've met all your obligations. So as soon as you want to come back, you can either have a week or two to work under some mentorship and just step back into it if you're feeling a little rusty, or you can just graduate and be autonomous at that point. So yeah, we've kind of nailed it in terms of timing. So we get a little bit of top up on mat leave, and then she'll probably go back to working 1 or 2 clinic days a week, I'd guess, after like maybe 8 months.
She gets 8 months of maternity leave?
I don't remember the details of it. They don't get full pay, and they get like kind of half pay up to a certain point, and then they get a little less than that up into a point. But if she was not still technically considered a resident, she would get nothing, because as a family doctor, you're basically a contractor to the government. So you're kind of self-employed, so you don't get any benefits at all. So had we missed the window, like had Owen been born a month later, she would get nothing. So it kind of is. It's better than nothing. Pays for some diapers and some awesome little bits, right? So
yeah, it's so awesome. And how old's the baby? Sorry, I missed that.
He was born on the 11th of June, so he's like 5 weeks.
Holy cow! And is she breastfeeding?
Yeah.
So you're just basically all you do is just feed her.
Yeah,
that's what you
take care of her needs. And we've been really lucky, because her mom has been here pretty much since he was born. Her dad's been here for a couple weeks now too, and they've come and they've been kind of hanging out on the island, going hiking, going camping, but hands on deck. And it's nice to have some veteran parents around and some more experienced hands, and so we've been taking advantage of that whenever we can. And it's been me trying to help take care of her, but also her parents have been doing a very good job of that, which has been a godsend to be able to train a little bit more and do things that I need last month. Because obviously him being born like a week before semifinals was high stress, and then the last 2 weeks it's been similar.
Crazy.
So
do you like her parents?
Pardon me?
Do you like her parents?
Yeah, I do. I love them. They're actually great. But I think that like any people, we have our little things that we don't align on. And so I have found that right now, when my training is really high and stress is high, your bandwidth just runs a little thin. And so there's like those little things that are totally nothing, sometimes just like irritate me a little more than they should. And so I've had to get a little bit better, just, taking myself away, going for a walk, doing something to keep my mind fresh, because it's energy to have more people in the house all the time, and you sort of feel like you can't really relax. And like you're kind of on, you're entertaining a little bit, you're just more on, you're walking around with your shoulders up a little more than you would relaxed in your own house. So having that for the last month, it's a little more mental wear, I'd say, but they're lovely. They're awesome. They're super helpful. It's just, it's different when it's just you and your partner.
Well, it's funny you say that. I was actually thinking about that this morning. In the shower, I was thinking that when I do podcasts, I always think that I'm just being so myself. And then the second we stop recording, then I'm like, oh shit. And then we'll start we'll stop recording today, and I'll be like, okay, Pat, thanks for coming on. Don't close your browser window yet. And then all of a sudden I'm like, no, that's the real me. The last hour and a half, I thought that was me. And it's not that I'm being fake or not authentic. It's just kind of like, I'm more on now, right? We're recording and I have to be more on.
Exactly the feeling.
It's kind of weird, but I never feel it when I'm doing it until it's over. I'm like, oh, you know what I mean?
Yeah, you take a big breath and it's kind of,
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of that. Like I love them, but it's the same. My parents have been here they were here for kind of 4 or 5 days about a week and a half ago. And it's the same when my parents are here. Like you feel like you got to be, a little more engaged, a little more, and maybe entertaining them so it's just like, I feel like it's less acceptable for me to just go, oh, fuck off in the other room, like watch some TV and stretch for like an hour, even though like some days that's probably what I should do. And they wouldn't care if I did it, but I feel like I can't do it.
Right.
So, you're paying
host, you're doing this, you're doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. But there's been a bit of that in the last while. So yeah, it is what it is.
Another thing I noticed with the grandparents, and I learned this. It unfortunately took me one kid to learn this, but there's things like there would be like my kids would fall down, and I would always like let them, like if I used to walk Avi a lot in his first 2 years, like, and first of all I love the fact that he crawled, and I never wanted him to be encouraged to walk because for some reason I think crawling's the holy grail of fitness, and once you walk you'll never ever fucking crawl again. So I was never interested in like getting things to try to promote my kid to walk. I wanted him to spend a lot of tummy time and I wanted him to crawl a lot. And so then finally when I would see people like the grandparents trying to encourage him to walk and holding his hands and stuff, it would piss me off for the first kid. And then the second kid, and then as he got older, when he would fall down, they would come over and pick him up. And I'd be like, man, you just stole a fucking burpee from him. Like, you just stole the fucking whatever that is, the concentric movement of him standing back up. And I had all these thoughts. And finally I was like, you know what? Fuck that. I can only control how I do it. And everything else, how the world treats him, it even comes with like the way they eat. Like if we go to someone's house and they gave him something that I would never feed my kid, outside of like soda, I just don't interfere. Like, okay, like we're at this person's house and they gave him goldfish and I would never feed him that. But I had to, by the second and third kid, I let all that go. I only just made sure the grandparents are going to be the grandparents, and it was never worth like fighting with my parents. I realized just to make these little changes. Like my kids will know the rules when I'm around versus when the grandparents are around. You know what I mean?
Kids know it, and they'll take advantage of it, and they're aware, right? But I think that you're right. There's only so much baggage you can carry, right? You got to choose your battles, and I think you'll wear yourself out if you try to, take on every little thing like that. And you've got kids much like I've only had you for a few weeks, right? But you can see that around. I think that I see I have a niece that's 7, and I've seen it with her, and the way my parents spoil her, and my brothers kind of like, hey, we know the deal when we send her off, and that's what we want time, and we want the grandparents to look after. So that's how it works. And when she comes home, she can't do it. And it's the way it works. She's and to your
vocalist, right?
Yeah, that's right, Vienna. Yeah, she's funny. She was here when my parents came to visit. She came with me, or she came with them here. So we had her around as well, watch her train for a few days, and that was fun. I was trying to work out, and she's like a 7-year-old just talking your ear off the whole time. I was doing like intervals. She was like trying to get me to watch stuff, and I was dying trying to breathe. Sevan, I was just going to say, to your credit on the tummy time and walking and crawling, crawling is a very important developmental milestone. Like you can't skip it because it's good for like, it's for spine development and motor development. So you're right. You should crawl and like those things. But I'm the same. I love trying to have Owen, like he's really trying to hold his head up and has been since he was like 2 weeks old. Quite strong now, but I let him hold his head up as long as he can, and then when he just conks down because he runs out of gas, I let him do it. And, so it's good. I think it is good to allow your kids to challenge themselves and struggle a little bit. You don't need to pick them up immediately when they fall all the time, but again, I'm a very, very green parent, so I'll see how my attitudes change over time, I guess. I have the best intentions and the best plans, but I don't know how it's going to be when, sometimes you're tired and you need things done or blah, blah, blah. And we'll see.
My 4-year-olds learned how to dress themselves before my 6-year-old because I always got him dressed, right? And still to this day, when my kids go to the bathroom, I always go to the bathroom with them. Like I take them to the bathroom, but I see kids in the, because I've taken that opportunity away from them. But I see kids in the jiu-jitsu studio who are 3 years old who go to the bathroom by themselves. And so you can start seeing these places where you babied your kid, and they have shortcomings before it. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but you have to be conscientious of those shortcomings. Like when I would put Avi down on tummy time, and I would set the timer for 2 minutes, right? Because if after 30 seconds he starts crying, you know that as soon as you hear a baby cry, it's like put everything down and go check on the kid. You just become biologically wired for that. So then I'd be like, okay, I need to just sit by him and take some deep breaths and let another 90 seconds pass. And 9 out of 10 times he would stop crying. And I did the right thing by not reacting. But it is it's a trip. You're in full all of a sudden just in full protection mode. It's crazy. You've had so many things happen to you that are like huge things. Baby, wife going to medical school, bought a new house, trained for arguably one of the most difficult events on the planet. It's nuts. Do you ever feel like you're losing your mind? Like, do you ever feel like, holy shit, this is like, what the fuck is going on? Do you compartmentalize? Is it all just Patrick Vellner?
Just another year, man. Just another year. I feel like, I do think that compartmentalizing is how I manage it. It's funny. I feel like I very rarely think of all the things I have to do or have done or are going on at one time. Because it seems very overwhelming when you kind of make a list, but I've done a good job, and Michelle is great, and we work together in a way that allows us to kind of get the things done that we need to do, and we tend to operate at pretty high efficiency. You know, she's a doctor, and like we all are busy, and we manage to set our lives up in a way that we can kind of all help each other out and steer around each other and help each other. But it's busy, and it just always has. I think it's a slow build, and then you just kind of get used to things and they become normal, right? The last year for sure, like we've done a lot of adulting in the last year, getting the house, having a baby, you know, both finishing, like she finished her school basically now, and we've been working and for sure. And those have been big, like I said, I feel like big grown-up steps. But prior to that, I mean, we've still been the same kind of busy. You know, when I was at school and I was still going to school for full days and training and doing whatever else I needed to do and trying to find time for friends and social time. Like the last, 5, 6, 7 years of my life have been pretty much the same, where it's this delicate dance between where you can fit things in and how to keep yourself sane with the busy schedule you're trying to keep. So, like I said, I'm fortunate that I have a partner that lives very much the same way and understands, and we help each other out when we're each at very critical periods. You know, when we went for the quarterfinals time, I went and competed in Victoria, about kind of 90 minutes away from where I live here, and Michelle was sitting for one of her board exams at the time, and so we basically. I finished, advanced for the semifinals, all good. And then I came home, and then she had like 3 days of cramming that she had to finish, and then she wrote her exam. So it went from her trying to help support me, get ready, do what I need to do to be successful, to a full flip where now I had to do that same thing for her and take care of any needs that she had. Right. So I think we understand each other and each other's needs. And yeah, like I said, if I sit back and look at the list, sometimes you're like, whoa, and it can stress you out. But when you focus in on one thing at a time and you just sort of stay engaged in the task at hand, I think it makes it a little bit more palpable and manageable. To just take little bite-sized chunks, and with lots of small steps, you travel a great distance, right? So I think it's more about just making the task list, accomplishing one thing, checking a box, then checking another box, and then using that momentum and just keeping trotting forward, because life keeps coming at you.
You said adult. Go ahead, Brian. I won't forget.
What's the plan for you guys in terms of managing the games this year? Is she gonna be able to travel, or is she gonna stay back home?
She is. So we basically, her and Owen are both going to come. My parents are going to be there as well to help her with the baby during the competition. And we've had, people are very generous. Like even, Matt and Sammy who are going to be there, they're psyched to see the baby, and Sammy's offered to be sit during games as well. So people are very, very kind and generous. But we've kind of set it up in a way that we think work. I have a separate room during the competition where I'll stay so that I can get some sleep. And
that was going to be my
I mean, we had to get him a passport almost immediately after he was born. Like the day he delivered, same day I had to file paperwork to get him a passport to make sure that it would be done in time for him to be able to travel. So we had to jump through quite a few hoops there just to make sure that we'd be able to do it. We had to drive down to Victoria again to go to the passport office and drop the documents off in person to make sure it got processed fast. And it was just like, a little bit of running around and a little bit, but prior to, we knew that. So before labor or anything like that, like we had the documents drawn up and ready to go. And all that was left was to write the date of birth and like the name and all that kind of stuff. So once we finalized that, we just sort of, while we're sitting in the hospital, we submitted the paperwork.
Did you have the baby's name before the baby was born?
Not really. So again, sorry, I have a hair in my mouth.
How did that happen?
I think it flew up from my chest.
Okay. Not exactly the answer. There's not a lot of follow-up questions to that. But
we were so we've had like this last name sort of conflict on for years. So Michelle's last name, she has a hyphenated last name. So we were sort of like, she wanted to preserve some of her name, and we were just unsure how to do it. Completely open to it. It just sort of, the hyphen thing is sort of has a finite range to it, right? Like you can't just keep hyphenating forever. So you've got to drop at least one part of the hyphen. And then it's sort of like, okay, well, we're dropping your mom's name or your dad's name. And it became this, like, we talk about it maybe once a year for the last, 7 years of just like, hey, if and when we have a kid, how are we going to do this? If and when we get married, how are we going to do this? And, I think that in the end, we ended up just giving him my last name. She still has her full name. I expect that as a professional, she's going to still work as Dr. Workenhill. I have no, I have no right to that side of it. I think that she earned the title on her own, and I have nothing to do with it. So, but yeah, we ended up eventually. That was why the name wasn't exactly settled until in the hospital. I feel like that morning we were kind of talking about it, and to be honest, I think we basically settled on simplicity. We were like, it'll just be simpler and easier. And there were some small pieces of it, like every now and then we'd mention. It's hard for me to change my name a little bit when like I have like brand association with my name and things like that. So I think likewise, like I was going to change my name as a professional or as an athlete, and I didn't expect her to change her name as a professional. So it was more about just what we did with Owen, but we didn't have a middle name or a last name decided until the morning in the hospital.
You did have the first name? You did have the first name?
We were like 90% sure. I think that
you would already call him Owen when she was in the tummy. She would be like, "Oh, Owen's kicking."
No, we actually were. Well, we were trying to get better at saying that by the end, but very early on in pregnancy, we kind of we started calling him Speck because early on he's just like a little speck, right? And it was just to say we didn't have it. Yeah, we didn't have a name chosen. We didn't have any. This little speck didn't have an identity. It's like a little marula cell. It was all whatever. So we just called it Speck for simplicity. Of embryology.
I forget, but my wife signed me up when she got pregnant. She signed me up for it was like a daily or weekly update where I could read everything that was going on with the kid. And it was,
did you?
I was so stoked she did that. It was awesome.
It's cool, really cool.
Yeah, then I figured out when I had to stop hitting her in the stomach, stop punching her. Like, oh yeah,
we and then just basically as baby got bigger and bigger, we just kept calling him Speck because we didn't have a name picked out. So I would say up until like 36 weeks, we were still calling him Spec. And
That's
then
dangerous, by the way. I don't recommend that. Don't do that. Don't do what Pat Vellner did. Have a baby, but don't, because that could stick. Your kid could have been named Spec. You know it. It could have happened.
It almost did probably, but I think that, we'll probably still call him Spec as like a nickname, and he'll never know why. And that'll just be our little secret.
I was surprised when my wife changed her name. So we had the baby. He was just Avi Matosian. But then after we got married, she was like, one day she's like, oh shit. And I'm like, what? She's like, I went down to Social Security to change my last name. And I took the marriage certificate on accident instead of my birth certificate. And I was like, what are you doing that for? She's like, oh, I'm changing my name to your last name. And it caught me off guard. I was like, whoa, you are? Don't you got to ask me first?
Your name. So that was.
You said that something that caught my attention because it's a term that I use too, not exactly like that, but you said you were adulting and doing grown-up stuff. And it's weird because one of my questions is like, when you bought the house, who does the paperwork, like you or your wife? And like adulting's weird, and doing grown-up shit is weird. For me, I don't want to say I don't enjoy it, but like somewhere a few years ago, I decided I'd never really want to become an adult. That I don't see anyone who's an adult who I picture as an adult, and I know it's a pretty abstract concept, having fun in life. And I do picture you as someone who probably doesn't want to be an adult either, because you're pretty fun too.
Oh, thanks, Sevan. But I agree with you, and I think that here's the thing about like life in general is everybody's looking around at each other like someone else has got to figure it out, right? So I think that when you look around and you say that, like, oh, I'm adulting, or like this guy is an adultier adult than me, they know what's going on. They don't know what's going on. Right? They're not adulting any better than you do, right? So it's sort of this arbitrary point where we think that at some point, like, I don't know, I thought I'd turned 30 and all of a sudden I knew how to build a fence and I understood mortgages and all the stuff, and it just doesn't happen, right? So it is interesting. I think nowadays the world has changed a little bit, where some of those skills we don't learn as young as maybe like my parents did or my parents' did. So I think that we maybe lack a little bit of mentorship in some of those areas. So I just kind of think it's funny, and it's a joke for us because, so stuff like when we bought the house, things like that. To answer your question, Michelle does the paperwork for the house.
I don't do any of that shit.
She's very much more meticulous with her organization than I am these days. So, I do I pay the thing or sign the document or do whatever I need to do when it tells me. But I think she very much carries the mental load of that, and I'm appreciative of it. But it's the same like when it comes to like kids or things like that. We hope that somebody else can guide us or help us figure it out. But it's different generationally too, right? Like raising a kid now is different than it was, in 1930, like when my grandparents were raising kids, right? And I think that everybody does their best, but you're raising kids in the environment that exists today, right? So the social and cultural environment has changed, and so because of that, like I said, people's become more heavily valued than others, and maybe you are more likely to emphasize certain things than others. So it's kind of fun in a sense, because it means every generation you're kind of reinventing the wheel. There's of course some advice and information that is going to transcend all generations, but when my grandparents or my dad tells me some way that we used to do things or they used to raise us, like it's different now because like every 6-year-old's on the internet and there's this and that, and like the social environment's just different. So we kind of have to adapt and focus on different things. And so it's fun in a sense because nobody knows what the hell is going on. And so
right
outside of that stage and say aren't raising kids or have already settled their mortgage or have whatever, kind of get to sit back and give peanut gallery advice. But sometimes they just don't know what they're talking about.
Oh, speaking of peanut gallery advice, the best advice I ever got for when I had a baby was from Chris Spieler. He gave it to me at the games. And he said that burping. You guys burp your kid?
Yeah.
I can't believe no one told me that, and I had to learn that from Chris Beeler at the games. But dude, there were 3.
Oh, you just got puked on for a while, or what?
Well, yeah, my wife fed on demand for all the kids, and Avi just would always just like throw up after he ate, just like he would just eat him, engorge himself. But the 3 things that worked 99% of the time were to swaddle, change a diaper, or burp. And almost any time he was crying, if you did one of those 3 things, it immediately went away. It was crazy, but I was so happy he told me about burping. I don't know who told you about burping.
Well, you know, we're lame, Sevan. We don't like we learn things in advance. We read things. We prepare. Like, we're pretty meticulous. Like, I think Michelle signed, especially with COVID and things. There's a lot of little like baby courses that went to online instead of being like live maternity classes. So you just signed into some little lectures, and you know, you hear some stuff, and it's like da 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 da. You know, you learn all the things. And then also we had the advantage, like I said, of having parents around for the first little while too. So we admittedly were not good at burping for a while. I think we would kind of try and give up because we didn't have the skill down. And we've since gotten much better. So, you know, we were wearing some puke for a little while too.
Isn't it?
That's great for sure. I think it helps them feed better too.
I'm trying to think what it's equal to. It's like, you know, when you drink what is it? There's this, you know, like if you take a shit right before you do a workout, it's like there's this relief, like, oh, that's awesome. It's like soon as your kid burps, you're like, oh, that is awesome. Or it's like every time right after you change a diaper, there's this great feeling of like, oh, it's going to be 2 more hours before I have to do this. You know what I mean? Totally. And I didn't even mind changing diapers, but there's this sense of like, you see time open up in front of you. As soon as a kid, you got the kid on your shoulder and you're patting his back and his burps, you're like, oh. There's this sense of like, yeah, or like if the mail came and your package arrived. It's just I
know it makes me feel like it gives me relief as well as him. I feel like, I feel like he got relief, and I'm like, oh, he's not going to be fussy now for a little bit. Like he's cool, and he's not going to puke. He's going to keep his lunch or whatever, right? He's not going to have to eat again for a little bit. He's not going to be super fussy. He's pretty good. He's like we're trying to get better at soothing him without feeding him. I feel like early on instinct is just to kind of like put him on the boob if he's super fussy. And early on, like they just cluster feed like that. But we've started to get him now, you know, he's growing up, man. He's 5 weeks old. Like he's got to get over that. So we're starting to get him more engaged in other things because he's starting to look around and pay. You know, he's got to start reading and walking soon. Like, come on, dude, just tell me what he's. But we're getting him looking at things and more tactile and stuff like that. We actually printed a bunch of like pictures of like snowflakes or like a chessboard or things that have really stark contrast. In just black and white, because babies their vision is mostly contrast based. They don't have really good acute vision yet. So just putting stuff like that in front of him, he really stares at it, and sometimes it calms him right down. So trying to experiment with other ways to soothe them and things like that. But yeah, we're getting all right.
I've been doing an experiment over here on my own as the only non-father in the group. I had never heard of the word morula before, and I don't know anything about the stages of embryology. But Vellner, comparison, I think that the current can be made a correlate to the stages of
Oh boy. Okay.
Keep going, Brian. This is good. You got us. You don't fuck this up. This is good. This is a good opener.
So I think I have them right here. I mean, just the first couple of days after implantation, I view this as the open. And then there's cleavage, which is meiotic cell divisions. This could be viewed as the quarterfinals. You get down to morula, the cells become a solid ball, and now you have a little bit, actually some people who are really contending for the season. Then you have blastula transitioning into gastroula, where you have a clearer picture of what's going on. And that.
Okay. So then, yeah, okay. So we never quite
desperate to get into the conversation. Desperate.
I just feel like we never made it to embryo even. So I guess you're just looking at initial stages of embryology.
Well, I was
Patrick,
not
he
sure how
talks
many
about
there
you
actually.
more than any athlete. Like when we're not on the air, your name comes up more than any other athlete. He talks about you more than anyone. And so
Well,
now
Yeah,
we've been
Brian and I are
talking
tight.
you have to understand we've been talking now for 34 minutes. He hasn't got in a word edgewise. He only has two choices, either to hate me or to fucking throw a Hail Mary. He chose the
We'll get off
makes
of
it, yeah.
we'll get off of fatherhood shortly, I guess, and then Brian can get more involved.
Patrick, you posted something on your Instagram, you doing your first open, and then you juxtapose that with your current open. Do any of your do you have any clothes from 6 years ago?
Oh, probably. I have a hard time getting rid of stuff. I think probably much to Michelle's chagrin, I think I do. I have way too much shit from like way too long ago.
There's no way any of those clothes fit you.
I mean, I'm sure I was swimming in it in 2016 or whenever that was. Sorry, 2013.
I can see that. So what size shirt is that you're wearing right now?
Large.
A large?
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Last time
And you're twice the size of me.
and I'm
See,
wearing
this is what I mean. Like, I'm not like that. I don't know. I'm not like an obscene person. I'm not huge.
You're very thick.
Thick here. I'm like thick in the midline. And I feel like thick in the back and the midline. Like when I was working in clinic, the clinics we worked at had a more strict dress code than the clinic I work at now. So we'd have to wear a button-up shirt. And most of my button-up shirts like super tight around the bust, right? Because I just have like quite thick chest back. So I'd always be like, anytime I'm leaning over to do something, I feel like I'm going to blow a shirt up. So I had to get some specific shirts with a little give in them. So I'm big there, but I'm like, I don't know. I also think I don't look like I'm that big because I'm quite long. Like I have long arms and legs. So it like stretches me out a bit. I don't have that really stocky look to myself, but yeah, just a large, man. Wear a large shirt and medium shorts.
You have to look up my friend.
Your question
Look
about
up my friend John Berzink.
6 years ago is pretty interesting because I was very selective in my apparel for today's show. This is a shirt. I don't know if you can.
Pac-Man?
Chasing ghosts. And I made this shirt myself 6 or 7 years ago. But it's a Pac-Man. And it was actually an exercise rough in my garage alone. And I would chase scores of the guys who got me into the sport. And I would imagine them being one movement ahead or one rep ahead and then try to improve. But now I'm wearing it in honor of the pasty white ghost Patrick Vellner that I'll be chasing in a couple weeks.
Well, and I mean, Brian, I can relate to the chasing ghost thing because that's how I've been competing for the last, 18 months. So I get it. It's not easy. I appreciate the shout out on the shirt, though.
I think I should make an updated version that has your face right here.
Just as the last ghost, yeah.
Patrick, I think when I think of athletes being glad that Frazier's out, there's very few that I think that are not happy. And for some reason, and I don't know why, I think that maybe you're not happy, that you actually... And maybe it's because a lot of people don't think they can beat him, but for some reason I think that maybe you're like that samurai who's like, you want to beat him. Like he as much as you like him and as much as you have that friendship, it's like in college when you drop and break your favorite bong. It's like it's gone, and like he's gone, and it's like you're like fuck, like he needed to be beaten, and now like he's gone. And am I right about that at all? That you're kind of like you're kind of pissed, disappointed.
I'm not mad about it. I think it's disappointing. I think your reality is you're right. Like I think there is fundamentally something to the whole you got to beat the champ to be the champ thing. And I think no matter what happens this year, that'll always be something. And I think that it's annoying to have the opportunity stolen away from you. And I totally get it. He deserves retirement more than anybody. And I obviously am thrilled for him. But it's annoying to not just a shot, right? Like everybody wants to have a puncher's chance and everybody wants to just or maybe not everybody, but I certainly do. I think that the sport is better with him in it. But that said, everybody's athletic career comes to an end, and I think there's something really amazing about being able to make that decision for yourself and go out on your own terms. So I talk to Matt reasonably frequently, and we're good friends, and there's nothing left for him in the sport. And I think that he saw that, and he is now able to enjoy himself in a way that he hasn't in a long time, both he and Sammy, and I think that that's the best thing he could have done. Selfishly, I would love to have him competing still, right? Who wouldn't? I
think most people are glad he's gone. I don't think people think like you. I think people see it as an opportunity where you see it as like,
I see it as a lost
on the
opportunity.
table and the dog ate your last piece of pizza and you're like, God damn it.
Yeah, I would say that some people might see it as an opportunity. I see it as a lost opportunity.
Yeah. Does that fire you? Did it fire you up? Are you able to convert that to motivation?
I mean, probably a little bit. I think it's funny, the whole conversation around Matt retiring and the opportunities that lie in the men's field. I don't think it changes much. Like, I think people maybe now can say, oh, I can a little more tangibly see that goal, but I don't think it should, I don't think it should change the way you've been training. If it does, then you were training wrong to begin with. You should have been doing the things anyway. And if whatever you were going to do to make yourself good enough to win is what you already should have been doing, so him stepping away should make no difference.
I guess what I mean is when you win this year, when Patrick Vellner of Canada wins the CrossFit Games in 2021, he's gonna win the CrossFit Games, and that's awesome. But if Frazier was in the games, you would get 2 accolades. You beat Frazier, and you won the games. And so it's kind of like the prize money got cut down, which is another sensitive topic. It's just interesting, and I just don't think that I think that you, from just a little bit that I know you, and from just following you for the last 8-9 years you've been in the game, I just see you as like that's as important to you as winning the games. Like, you would really have liked to have socked it to him. I mean, it's
you're not far off base.
I think that about you. So
and like I said, I think any competitor who's like really, I don't know, really worth their salt would want that same thing.
That with Rich. Yeah, I'm sure Matt had that with Rich, right? He lost to Rich once, and then Rich bailed, and he's like, God damn it.
Yeah, it's something you got to get over, right? Like, you got over it. I'm not thinking he's going to come back just so I can get a punch in. Like, so it is what it is. And in the last 2 years,
you know where he lives. You can just go get him.
Yeah, exactly. He's coming to my wedding. Maybe I'll just sucky him when he walks in. I'll set up a surprise workout. I'll train all summer, and then I'll set up a surprise workout when he shows up to the wedding.
I was watching an interview you did with your is that guy Nathan your regular videographer?
He was reasonably regular until just recently. He actually just moved. He was living in Vancouver on the west coast of Canada. He just moved all the way to the east coast like a week ago, 2 weeks ago.
Oh, wait, why would he do that?
So he and his partner they met out there. He's kind of from out that way. He's from like Eastern Canada, and they school out there, and they have lots of family and friends out there. And they had come out west because she worked for Lululemon headquarters, and that's where the work was. So they did a little stint out here, but they just moved out east. It's cheaper to live out east, frankly. Like, they were just kind of like, Vancouver is this pretty stifling market, and she had great work, but she was getting sick of her
horse to
job.
His chariot. You're his horse. He's the chariot, and you're the horse.
Yeah, there'll be other things. He's good at what he does, and there'll be other opportunities. I think he'll be at the games. But yeah, I got to figure something else out because I'm not great with pumping out content myself. I certainly don't have the video editing skills that he does.
And you're not in the easiest area to get to.
No, I'm probably in the hardest place to get to in Canada.
Where are you? Describe for the people who are listening where you're at. You're on the North American continent on the west side, way up north.
Yeah, I'm in the Pacific Northwest. I live on an island off the west coast of Canada.
And how far is that island from the mainland? Is there a bridge?
No, you can get there by ferry, and it's a 2-hour ferry ride from Vancouver to Nanaimo, or you can get there by like plane, and the planes take like, or you can get there by helicopter as well. So you can either go seaplane, helicopter, or ferry, and ferry's slow. It's a 2-hour ferry. A plane. We have an airport, and if I fly anywhere, like let's say I got to go to Wadapalooza, I have to fly Nanaimo to Vancouver, then Vancouver to probably Toronto, then Toronto to Miami. And the Vancouver Nanaimo flight is like 12 minutes, but the ferry is 2 hours, right? It's not that far physically. The ferries move slow.
I think I've been to that island. I was there in 2008. I did a screening of Every Second Counts there. And I just realized I think I went on a water plane. You're right.
Yeah,
I know your island.
They're cool. I mean, it's cool. It's kind of like rustic and fun, but it's fun until you got to get somewhere fast or efficiently, right? Like for me to get to Madison is a train wreck. So it's just the way it is, though. You got to plan around it.
Didn't that island used to be like a haven for motorcycle gangs or something?
I don't know. It's funny. I treat in clinic. I treat a lot of RCMP and drug enforcement agents. But there is a lot of like drug trafficking stuff that goes on through there. So I think there was for a time a large amount of it. There's a little neighborhood town that just recently got like reclaimed by Hells Angels or somebody, and it's pretty crazy. They painted all the houses on the block black. So it's pretty wild and intimidating looking. But
yeah, wow.
Anyway, I don't like skip through that neighborhood all the time, but it's there.
Maybe it would increase your running time if you ran through there.
Maybe.
I've never seen.
Well, I might end up with a hole in my chest.
I've never seen a house that's completely painted black. I'm trying to think if I've ever seen one. Why don't they paint
Come on down.
black? Yeah.
Not usually. They're probably regretting it during the heat wave recently.
Speaking of heat waves, you have a window when the climate there is more habitable than others, right? The more enjoyable. You go outside. There's a season you look forward to more than the others. I'm guessing summer.
We're not too bad here, honestly. Like, yes, like anywhere, but our winters are pretty mild, and it's mostly rainy season. Like it might snow here like 1 week a year, maybe. So you get some rain. Like I outside at my house in like February and stuff like that. Like it rains a bit. You got to dodge the rain, and it won't be like warm. Like I might warm up with a sweater on and wear pants when I'm squatting or doing whatever, but I can train outside almost year round. So it's pretty good. But yes, of course, the summer is like the spring, summer, fall is pretty nice. I'd say anywhere from like April through to like is pretty nice.
And you have a rig attached to the side of your house?
Yeah, I built one this year during lockdown because I needed somewhere to work out. So we moved into this house in August of last year, and then that was like in the first month. I kind of gutted the garage, and it's a low ceiling garage, so I put some stuff in there, and then we put a rig on the outside just so I could do mostly everything I need to do.
And did your wife get angry that you were bolting a rig onto the side of your beautiful new house?
I think she would prefer that I didn't, but I think that she understands the necessity of it with the current lifestyle that we live. And she uses it sometimes too, so it's not just me.
How do the neighbors like it?
It's funny. Our neighborhood is like, it's pretty tight. Like people just sort of know everybody's business. Which is funny. Like it's not like the houses are right packed in, but it's just kind of a tight neighborhood. And so people just sort of, when we moved in, everybody already knew who we were, like what we did. And it was just sort of like common knowledge, because I guess the people who sold us the house kind of knew us, and it just sort of snowballed. And, so people already knew a little bit. And when I put that up, like my neighbor, it faces kind of my neighbor's house on the one side. And he'll come out sometimes and just sort of sit on his deck and just watch for a little bit and then go back inside. And he's quite old, so he's got to be in his 70s. So it's kind of funny. Like people are always, our street particularly, There's a path right by it, so there's lots of people who come and just walk their dogs down there. Kids are always rolling around on bikes and scooters down there, so often there'll be like kids ripping by and they stop and watch for a few minutes and then they keep going, and so it's fun. I try not to do anything that's super noisy or disruptive. I tend to not play music outside. I don't push sleds or anything on the street because I think it's just like a bit grating, and I wouldn't want that. I don't. I do that stuff at the gym if I have to do it. But it's funny. And I also don't leave things up. Like I take my ropes down and my rings down like anytime I'm not using them, because I don't want kids to come over there at night and hurt themselves. So
take your
but
rope
yeah,
down.
it's kind of fun. Yeah,
take your
pretty
rope
easy. I just throw a ladder up and I go and unhook it and I pull it down. It's pretty easy. I just basically, I don't put it up unless I'm going to use it. So if I have a workout that's got rope climbs or rings in them, then I put it up and then I use it and then I take it down. So keep the kids safe, man. I know there'll be kids up there swinging on it if I didn't. So
Do you push harder when Grandpa's watching?
yeah, probably.
That's cool.
I feel like you always push harder when somebody's watching.
Yeah, totally. I had two.
Although maybe it just
day.
depends. Maybe it depends what I'm doing. If I'm on a machine, you can't see the numbers, maybe not. But if I'm doing like bar muscle ups out there, I'm like, fuck yeah, watch me do 20. And I'm like, hang on.
Does he know? Does he know what he's looking at? Does he know he's looking at? No. He must.
I highly doubt it. I've actually a couple times where he's asked me to come help him with something, like legit while I was in the middle of doing something. Like the bar muscle is a perfect example. I was doing intervals of some kind one day where it was like, I don't remember what it was, like maybe rowing and bar muscle ups, and I was legitimately like doing a set of like 10 bar muscle ups, and I was in the middle of a set, and he like walked right over to the front and he's like, hey, can you help me unload this, whatever it was, like a bench out of his car. And I was like, I was answering him while I was doing bar muscle ups. I was like, yeah, just like, if you can give me like 5 minutes, I'll come help. Yeah. I just need to finish like 2 more of these and I'll be right there. So, I think he's a little oblivious, probably, hopefully a little impressed, but yeah, mostly oblivious, I think.
I was never training for the games, but I used to train at this park, this school by my house, and it had a 400-meter track and pull-up bars. And we would carry a bunch of shit out there and we would work out, and we'd do that 5-6 days a week. And it is kind of amazing. Like people would just come over and just start talking to you while you're in the middle of something horrendous.
Yeah.
And
again, this is what my niece was doing to me the other day.
I guess a 7-year-old maybe, but can you imagine like Tom Brady's out there running drills and like someone like walks out to him like, hey, you mind come out into the parking lot real quick and help me unload this these 400 cases of Fit Aid, and you're just like, it just wouldn't happen to anyone else. Maybe they just don't recognize. I guess most people just don't understand that kind of working out, who would interrupt people while they're in the middle of that working out. I mean,
yeah, and I think there might be a little bit of, I think in general, the way people often are exercising, there's no real time constraints on things a lot of the time. It's like, oh, I could just put down this set of dumbbell curls and yeah, I'll help you with whatever you want, and then go back to it. So I think probably people don't really have an understanding of like the urgency of what you're doing.
Right. Great.
So that might play a role with it, but it is funny sometimes. The track one is hilarious. Like I've definitely run at the track before. There's people who are out walking on the track with their soul, which is great, and I love that they're there doing it, but they're like hugging the inside lane and their kids like zigzagging across 3 lanes, and I'm, man, there's like 3 of us here at the track who are running, and like we would appreciate it if we just like, even if I could just predict where you were going to be, but like you're like swerving. And I was at the park the other day or in a soccer field doing just some agility cone stuff, and there's a splash pad right by it, and there were so many parents and kids who just walked and cut right from my little setup. And just, I was like standing or like about to run, or I was in the middle of a run, and they would just sort of like, the parents would just waddle right through. And I was like, man, come on. Like, I get it if your 4-year-old just rip through, and I'll jump over them if I have to. But if the parents would just look right at you and then, man, come on.
Right.
It is nice sometimes. It's obviously just a shift in priorities.
Yeah, lack of situational awareness. I mean, it's pretty obvious, probably the intensity in which you're working out, that there's like a bubble around you that someone who has a modicum of fucking situational awareness to be like, okay, don't disturb that. It's like someone reading at the library, but it's different.
Yeah. That's how I feel for sure. But I know that I'm on the inside, right? But that's kind of how I feel. Look, it's pretty clear that I'm not just like playing here right now. I'm
right.
clearly doing something, and like this is clearly a training exercise. It's not like I'm just fooling around,
right.
or I wouldn't be breathing like this and making these faces, you know. So
and some people walk up to you and just say to you also, like, while you're resting, hey, what are you training for? Because people used to say that to me too, and I wasn't training for shit. I was just exercising. But CrossFit does, when people are working out CrossFit hard, other, athletes will say, hey, people who don't know CrossFit will say, hey, what are you training for? Like, they think you're training for something.
Yeah.
Have you heard that?
I've had it a few times. I wouldn't say super regularly.
Maybe you don't push
but
as hard as me. Maybe you don't push as hard as me.
Probably. Or probably people just assume I'm training for some sort of sport because I'm still young. But whereas you're like a 50-year-old or 40-year-old person. Okay.
I was young then too. Recently I was talking to Matt, and he was mentioning we were discussing about the prize money, about the semifinals, how it was capped at $5,000.
Yep.
And I don't know if that's, I'm assuming that's true because Matt shared that with me, but I don't know if it's true. And I think it was kind of part of our discussion when Josh and I and him were talking about why the Rogue Invitational, Dubai, and Wadapalooza weren't part of the semifinals, because I guess they weren't willing to lower their prize money. And
Matt Frazier?
Yeah, I think he was sharing that with me, something like that. Don't quote me exactly on that. But then that, in conjunction with, I've heard people have told me that you have considered not doing the CrossFit Games, not doing, sort of going through the CrossFit loop, and just switching to things like focusing on the Dubai Classic, Wadapalooza, Rogue Invitational. Is there any truth to that? Have you entertained that idea of like pursuing all the other competitions in order to make ends meet, as opposed to dealing with what the thing, all the obstacles that have been in the CrossFit world the last 3 years?
I think I would say, yeah, I've considered that. And I think that a lot of athletes will look at exercising that option probably. And I think a lot of that story will depend on what happens in this. I think that it's a combination of factors because, frankly, the CrossFit Games season this year, if it stays with this same look and the same prize money at the semifinal, and there's really only one earning opportunity for the whole year, and the season's about 7 months long. So it's really just putting all your eggs in one basket. You have to finish top 10 to make, $20,000 on the year, which is not enough to justify that length of time and that amount of training, in my opinion. Whereas, if you compete in an alternative season where, say, you're able to do things like Rogue, Dubai, Wadapalooza, maybe there's another big one in there somewhere, you can hedge your bets slightly. You can compete in probably a short length season, so have a longer off season, have more appearances for sponsors, things like that. You can create more visibility for yourself and your brand partners. There's just a lot more opportunity, and you get to travel and do other things. From a lifestyle perspective, it's actually a little bit more appealing. I basically did that in 2019, between 2019, 2020. I went and did, I did Wadapalooza, I did Rogue, I did Dubai. So say, for example, after the 2020 season, I did Dubai, I did Wadapalooza, and I did Rogue, and I came second in Dubai, and I won the other two. And so I earned the second most income on the season compared to all the athletes that competed that year. And I didn't even make the top 5, right? I finished 9th, I think, in stage 1. So it just goes to show that there is a way to do that and earn a good living, create high visibility, have really cool marketing opportunities and just lifestyle opportunities without having to be in the trenches of the CrossFit Game season, like in those ruts. And if it ends up being, obviously the semifinals was a bit weird this year because half of them were online. But that might change. I don't think that that's going to be the way it is forever. That, you know, those prize money, the prize purses will stay fixed at what they were. I think it's a little bit out of COVID solution, I hope anyway. But depending on what sort of timelines they announce for next year and what sort of prize money large competitions announce, it wouldn't surprise me at all to see some athletes exercise that option. Like we've seen precedent for it before. Like I said, personally, an athlete like Sarah Sigmund's daughter had great competing in sanctionals and then had a hiccup at the games, but still earned a large, like a good living on the year, right? So there's certainly opportunity there, and really, you know, the more big opportunities and big events that pop up, probably the better for the ecosystem as a whole, because not every athlete needs to be at every event, but you know, more injection of, you know, brands and money and those sorts of things and opportunities into the ecosystem is just going to be better. It's going to provide growth. So I don't know. I think there's, you know, I'm not settled on that, but it's certainly an option that I would look at, because those events are fun, man. And I think that having to focus your year on a 7-month season for the CrossFit Games and turn down those opportunities would be heartbreaking, and it would suck. But if you're going to try to win the games year after year, it might be almost necessary, because you need to exercise that off season often, right? And if you go through the games,
off season. Say that again. You need to what that off season?
I said you need to exercise that off season option. Like you need to do you need to do some building and recovering, and if you're competing, you know, from what were we? Again in April, then again in May, then again in July, then again in October, then again in December, then again in February. Like now you're going to be toast. Like you've got one cycle of that maybe, and you're going to be really in a hard place by the time you get back to the Open. So anyway,
your body will be beat down. Is that?
Yeah, and you'll just be tapped, like physically, mentally, emotionally. I think that there's a large toll that comes with competing a lot of times, and the travel associated with it and things like that. So it's hard to balance that with high performance. So, you know, we'll see. I mean, some athletes might choose one direction and some might choose another, which I think would be the coolest situation. Is, you know, let's say you have 10 people who are top performing kind of games caliber athletes who in an alternative season, and then you've got your top games athletes who choose to compete in the CrossFit Games season, and you've kind of got this like two champion situation, and then these two people who are competing, and like then what? How do you unify the belts, man? So who's the fittest, right? Like you could have a legitimate argument for that. The fittest athlete wasn't competing at the CrossFit Games. You know, let's say just from thought exercise that Tia decided she would earn more money on the year competing in the alternative season and forewent the CrossFit Games season. Would anybody at the CrossFit Games be able to say, oh yeah, well no, like, so this person's the fittest woman on earth now? I think people would probably still think Tia was.
Why don't you think anyone's come into the sport? I mean, I guess there's maybe one obvious answer, that it's not lucrative, but I wonder why someone like, pick your company, Coca-Cola, hasn't decided to just say, hey, we're going to put, you know, $30 million towards an event, 20 million to run it, 10 million for prize money, and take all the air out of the room, run it the week before the CrossFit Games, and all the athletes fucking jump ship.
I think up to now, it's been a certain amount of respect for CrossFit Games. Like a company like Dubai could certainly do that. But I think that they haven't, because they don't want to they want to team, and people want to be a part of the ecosystem. They don't want to suffocate it. But you know, is there a chance that happens? Maybe. And you know, I mean, from an athlete side,
Nike
like
from doing, if Nike thought that they could sell enough shoes to do, fuck Nike. If McDonald's thought they could sell enough hamburgers at that event to pay for it back and build brand value, I'd have to guess they'd do it tomorrow.
I mean, those companies do it for things like the Olympics, right?
So I think they have a fiduciary duty to make money for their investors. It's an interesting, like, you know, some CBD oil company that's making, someone who's selling joints, who's making $500 million a year gets behind the CrossFit Games. But I'm guessing
I think it'll be interesting to
that's
see.
why they haven't done it.
Yeah, maybe. And I think that it'll be interesting to see, because I know that now with Eric Rosa in the captain seat, I think he's a little bit more open to those sort of new parts, and than Greg was. And so I think that there might be some opportunity for that like new brand partners start to come in and you start to interact in new platforms and new ecosystems. So we'll see what that leads to. I think that was part of his base plan, but obviously things like COVID have changed a lot of the business side because companies struggled a lot in the last couple of years. So I think the next year will hopefully tell more of a story. But interesting for the guys like the Justin Medeiros and the Jason Hoppers of the world who are going to be here for a while. I make no bones about it. Like I'm not going to be competing a lot with that. So it'll be what it'll be, and I'm going to do what I can with whatever's left, and I'm going to try to maybe steer things in a direction that I think is good for athletes, because that's the world that I live in. But I don't know what's going to happen for those guys in the future, and I hope it's good. I hope it's great.
Just on a side note about Greg was always open to Marlboro or Coca-Cola sponsoring the games, but he wasn't willing to sign anything that wouldn't say that he couldn't disparage them. So I think that was.
I don't think companies do that though.
No, yeah, they definitely.
That's not really being. I don't know if that's really being open then, is it?
Well, he just wanted to, like, he was open to Coca-Cola sponsoring the games, but he also wanted to be able to say, yeah, Coca-Cola has infiltrated the health sciences and manipulated it and lied. And by the way, if you drink Coke, you're going to get, don't get me wrong, Greg would drink a Diet Coke in a second. I've seen the guy drink 10,000 Diet Cokes. His problem was just that he just wanted the truth around the product, but he was more than willing to take their money. But yeah, I don't know if it's not open, but he wanted to be transparent.
Right. I can say, I don't think companies love that. They take their money and then disparage them publicly.
Right.
So I could see why they didn't jump at that.
Right.
Pat, I think you articulated well the everything surrounding the two different options potentially in pursuing careers in the sport. I'm wondering if something has changed recently. Like, I think it used to be where to get opportunities with sponsors or brands, you had to do well at the CrossFit Games. And it's really this year that I'm starting to think that that's no longer necessarily the case when I see people like Mallory O'Brien and Jason Hopper who have yet to even floor on the competition or at the CrossFit Games sponsorships. Do you feel like maybe there's like, you said you could make 10th place and get $20,000, but that's not enough. 10th place finish, you've probably attracted enough brands to make some income outside of competition from the sponsors. You don't necessarily have to do that if you show up to even do pretty well there or win that already sponsors.
Yeah, I mean, you have to look at what are sponsors really paying for, right? They're paying for marketing, they're paying for visibility of their product. So if you can create a world that has better visibility for the athletes, or you have athletes who are particularly good at branding and marketing, we have athletes who've never made the games, who've been, competing for many years, who have a lot of visibility and notoriety. Take someone like Allison Scudds, who's the captain of the demo team. Very, very visible, like very notable athlete, has never made it to the games. But that doesn't matter. Like, she does a good job of branding herself, marketing herself, and she's a good athlete. So, there are season options. Like, that's what that alternative season could create an opportunity for her. Instead of only having one chance to compete at a semifinal and then maybe she doesn't make it, now you give her 3, maybe 4 opportunities to set foot on a prestigious competition floor with really stiff competition, and strut, right? And so I think that there are a lot more opportunities in that type of a system, and it would be ideal if that's kind of what was cool about the sanctional system. I think in hindsight, it would be cool if we could create a system that would feed both of those things, but it might be just difficult right now. We have to figure out it would be hard without like going through another really turbulent year of changing the whole system and whatever. And I think that right now, another thing people really want is stability, a way to like predict what's going to come next, and understand the sport again and be able to follow it easily. So, you know, there's also that side that you have to service, right? That like affiliates and fans and people want to be involved, and it's hard when the system is really complicated and broad like that. But you're certainly right. I think that there are lots of opportunities for athletes to market themselves and earn and have fun and compete, right? That don't necessarily involve the CrossFit Games competition floor.
It is a little frustrating though that Patrick has to worry about that kind of stuff, because as a fan, you want all these people to kind of just put their head down and work, so that we can see them at their best, and that the people that their personality, you know, their personality, but their performance also speaks for itself. You know, like I don't think it kind of bums me out that Patrick even has to think about that, or that, you know, I get why Allison Scuds maybe has to think about that, but this is the guy. Why the fuck should he have to think about that? I mean, that's the one place where I'm just like, the ecosystem should have some mechanisms in there that reward the people at the top. And by reward, I don't even mean necessarily financially, but like look what happened to Rich. We made a movie about him called The Fittest Man on Earth. I mean, that's fucking brand changing. And so there should be mechanisms in there. There should be media around him. There should be like the sport should, like all the other sports, or like anything, like the top news anchor in the world, or the top, you know what I mean? Like the fighters, you don't even have to be the best fighter, but if you're the nemesis of the best fighter in the world, you still get accolades. So I don't know. I my words, not yours, Patrick or Brian, but it is a little, and I'm not blaming anyone. Maybe everything's still working itself out, but it would be nice that, like, I mean, look at this guy. You took 544 points in the Atlas Games after the great Brian Friend said that a virtual event would not be good for you, and you he's never wrong. And you demolished the fucking pack. And,
I did not say it wouldn't be good for him. I just said he would probably prefer a live competition, well, outside of the fact that he had a kid the week before.
You said historically he sucks without a crowd because he can't draw energy from them. Like
no, I did not say that.
Oh, all right. That was my interpretation.
I would say that in a few times, I know he in online competitions before, but I think I
mean, I won the Open last year.
Yeah, I think you'd prefer the live competition though. Okay.
I would. It's also just more fun. Like competition format or points aside, it's just more fun. But yeah, certainly lining up next to Jeff Adler in an online competition isn't sweet, because he also was like really crushing the Open the last couple of years. He's done very well. Two things though, Sevan, about your last comment there is, for one thing, yeah, about some of this stuff, and I don't think that I have to. I think that it's a bit altruistic for me to try to involve myself or engage myself in those sort of issues, because like I said, I'm not going to compete for a whole lot longer, and it's more for athletes coming up. I think we want to make sure that there's incentives there. Like, for example, if you're a 15, 16-year-old athlete who has games aspirations, and you saw that this year they cut the prize purse for the semifinals to next thing, you have very little incentive to try to get into the sport, because you feel like the opportunities and the end game isn't there. We want to try to incentivize people to get involved. We want to try to make it more attainable. And part of that, you're right, is visibility. You know, the more visibility comes with it, the more brands get involved, the more the ecosystem grows. So those things, I think, are hopefully coming. You know, like we usually have a media deal for the games, and now that we're back to another full roster for a full weekend of the games, we'll create some cool visibility again. And I think that those things drum up engagement, drum up sponsors, and that's part of just an infancy thing. Like, I think very young. And you know, CrossFit's been around for a while, but the sporting side of it is just still very young. And I think that there's a lot of fluctuation and a lot of change, and it's just, that's the way it is. It's growing pains. So if you kind of climb that mountain and create, you know, I don't want to say lucrative deals, but really just like good deals that create good visibility for the sport as a whole. I think that there's a good trickle down to affiliates. There's a good trickle down to engagement for people. Like, I think CrossFit, it's sort of got a two-pronged approach where it converges in the middle. Like, we have a lot of marketing that targets elderly population, people with movement limitations, things like that, as a way to get them back to sport, right? And then you've also got this other side where it's high impact sport, and that really engages the minds of young people who are interested in football, basketball, baseball. And so I think, those can each service each other, and then they kind of meet in the middle, and they bring people to gyms and get them to meet to try to work towards different goals. But just like, getting grandpa engaged they might get their kids engaged in it or whatever, or just they might start to promote a healthier lifestyle and whatever. The same works the other way. Whereas if you get the young kids involved in a sports side, like my parents got involved and enjoyed watching the sports that I played. So what I did, it affected them and impacted them as well, right? So I think you can work it from both sides. So trying to maintain that marketing and that those strategies to engage old populations and disabled populations, all that kind of stuff is super duper valuable. And those are arguably the people who will benefit the most from lifestyle changes. But on the flip side of it, you might get those people engaged by getting their family members engaged, and the games can really service that. Those things like Netflix documentaries, like those kinds of things, just expand CrossFit to cast a wider net, and it reaches more people, and in absolute numbers, that's what you want. You just want more eyes on it. Are on it, the more you can get, the more the ecosystem grows, and that's sort of the end game. It's an infancy thing, I think.
A perfect example is I had zero interest in tennis. I just think it's completely absurd. And my kid's been playing for a year now, and I watched Wimbledon this year. I watched the French Open, parts of it. And on the podcast, I've quoted Novak Djokovic. What's his last name, Brian? Djokovic?
Yeah, no, you got it right. You got it right.
Djokovic. Yeah, I've quoted him a few times. And so, wow, what a great
Sevan, you're a classic name bastardizer.
Yes. Well, thank God.
I don't think I've ever heard someone miss a name more times than you. It's amazing.
Patrick Vellner, that is such a nice name. I appreciate just how all the letters just all make sense to me. And and I'll take this shot. I'll take this shot at CrossFit HQ. Viciously throw a fucking atomic bomb on them. It was a colossal fuck up in the last 15 months not to hire the biggest fucking media department in the world and put out tons of fucking content while people were trapped at home, and Netflix was fucking exploding and Amazon Prime was fucking exploding, and instead there's hacks like me building these podcasts and non-hacks, thank God, serving the community with the Pee Wee Herman version of the CrossFit Games, the Buttery Bros. And if it wasn't for people like that, then I mean, I'm all for letting the MMA world, which is cool, has a lot of hacks like me, in the space, but that was a colossal missed opportunity this last 15 months. Not to be putting something out every single day. They could be really cheap things. I mean, we did some amazing things. We could just do they could tell you, Patrick, hey, we want to pay you $500 this month just to show us every meal you eat. You know what I mean? To get some buy-in from you. Those series, any of those things that they could have done to draw in more people and to bring the community tighter together, it just bums me out.
I agree with you totally. I actually
bums me the fuck out.
And it's
easy to say in hindsight. The one caveat I'll give them, it's easy to say in hindsight, and not everyone's a brilliant executive media director like myself in my former life, but they could have hired me to consult them on that idea.
Totally. I think that, and I to be honest, wasn't paying super close attention to the CrossFit Journal or things like that, but I actually asked Eric Rozo months ago, almost a year ago. I work as a chiropractor and I do a lot of rehab and a lot of things like that. And I was like, hey, here's an idea. We could try to create a small channel where we just rehab stuff for basic core strength thing, basic whatever. And I could shoot some stuff and we could try to push some things like that out. And he said, oh yeah. And then nothing ever came of it. Right. And maybe I should have been more pushy on the issue, but I think that there was a lot of space for that. There still is. You're right. At a point when media content was being consumed. Yeah. Oh, Sevan, your pandemic rhetoric.
Thank you. I don't even know what the word rhetoric means, but I think it's a compliment. So let's go there. So were you training with a mask on?
When I was training at the affiliate in town, I was, yeah. That's partly why I made the gym at home, because certain things it's really shitty to wear a mask to do.
What specific, like burpees?
Well, anything super high heart rate. You do a bunch of bike intervals with a mask on, you're not going to last very long.
Did you ever get used to the mask?
Yeah, I mean, they're fine. Like, I'll weightlift mask all day. I don't really care. There's certain things, certain accessories. Like, I would just plan my sessions accordingly, right? If I was doing more accessory stuff or weightlifting stuff that was a little bit lower heart rate, it would be no problem. And anything really blasting my heart, I would do at home. Or I have a key to the gym as well. So sometimes if it was things that I needed the space or the equipment at the gym for, I would just wait until after hours, and then I would go in and do it there. And then just... But it's not that bad, honestly. Like, I don't know. In my opinion, people make too big of a deal over masks. They really aren't that big a deal. Yes, you can breathe. You'll be fine.
Man, you either have a better mask than me or far more tolerance. But I wonder if it'll change as you have a kid. I wonder if you'll be as okay with masks when your kid's 5 years old.
At 5 years old, I think it's different. Like, for me, my kid's an infant. I don't think it matters. He sees us at home and what I face. But I do think that, given a lot of what happened, and it's been more severe where we are than where you are, because it's just lasted longer. But are there going to be social effects? Likely, we have some friends who've had babies early in the pandemic, and they get a bit tense with more people around now. And, is it easy to become cold and objective as people when you never see someone's face, compared to having to empathize with someone when you see facial reactions in there? Of course, I think that's a totally reasonable expectation as a result of face coverings for a long period of time. Do I think it outweighs, the risks? It depends. At this point, probably we're past that stage, so it doesn't really matter. People should just get vaccinated, and then it's fine. That's the smallest kindness you can do to your neighbor. But early on, yeah, I think that there was a bit of that issue, and that was a struggle with the mask, is that people just become shut out from each other. And I think that humans crave interaction, and we want connection. And it does become hard to connect it. Frankly, like this, FaceTime, Zoom, all that, do it. I don't think it services our needs as humans. So I think that that's really important to get. Yeah, there's safe ways to do it. I think it's worthwhile to adjust your behavior to be respectful and be appropriate to the situation and the needs of other people. I just think it's part of participating in society, in my opinion. Like, when you have certain guidelines put in place, you should just try to respect them as much as you can, and respect the people who need that as well, right? So sometimes it's inconvenient for you, but it's not always all about you. It's sort of this egoistic altruism is what we need to get through something like a pandemic, where you realize that what's good for everyone is in fact what's good for me, because what's good for everyone is going to get us through this faster, and then I'm going to get back to doing what I want to do sooner. We would do well to adopt a little bit more of an approach like that.
I won't speak specifically on this one, but for instance, the procedures that are put in place to deal with type 2 diabetes, I would argue have in fact killed 100 million people. Basically, we know type 2 diabetes is diet related, and yet you go to the hospital, and I can't speak for all doctors, but a vast majority of medical professionals will then put a procedure in place that they've learned in medical school, which basically escorts you to your grave. Whereas, and by that I mean they get you on medication, and they start mitigating the damage without asking you to change your lifestyle habits. Whereas if there was a procedure in place, or if there was an open discussion about it, you could actually tell people, hey, stop eating Snicker bars and drinking soda and lower your sugar intake, and you can reverse this type 2 diabetes. My point being is that you're suggesting that people do things in order to follow procedure. And I guess, and my thought is that, hey, we have to question the procedure, because clearly you, at your end game, what you want is what's best for society. And that's what I want too. Right. But if you think pouring water on a grease fire is a good idea, I might be like, yo, Pat, you better not do that. It's going to make the problem worse. Right.
Right. So I think the fundamental
have discussion.
Your biggest mistake is that you think too much in absolutes, and I think that anyone who thinks very absolutely is going to have a lot of trouble. So I think you understand the system. You're saying, systems need to be in place, but the system currently is this, and it should be this, but it's not. The system is actually somewhere in between, and that's where it should be. So say, for instance, someone with type 2 diabetes comes in, they're be putting them on some medication that's going to control this acutely, because people who end up in diabetic shock can die, and you need to be able to control that in the short term. Yes, the doctors should also be having life patients, without a doubt. And the problem in an instance like that, which we see as well in COVID, is people are remarkably resistant to lifestyle change.
Right.
It is. I would agree with you that it is actually fundamentally one of the best ways to improve your overall health. Even in my field, when people come in with like chronic neck and back, it's often people who don't exercise. They make poor lifestyle choices, like people who carry around a little bit too much extra weight, and those are difficult conversations to have with people. And I think sometimes professionals rush through those discussions, and there should be more time and emphasis put on them, for sure. Because and the issue is, I think we all want quick fixes, and it's not necessarily a fast solution, and it's a hard one to do from right now. Like, when I walk in the door, I want to fix right now, and you're telling me, 20 years ago, you should have started exercising. And we'll have a hard time with that. But the reality is that, the best time to plan, or the second best time, and people have a hard time going, and then changing their thought and turning the gears around and getting moving. And some people do a great job of it. And it's actually the most satisfying thing in the world when you see somebody really make a great lifestyle change and improve their health. You see them cognitively improve, like their attitude improves, their affect, like everything is better, right? And it is hard, but that's the thing, is it's the same, like for diabetes, you're right, we should be doing. I think that to argue that we should only make lifestyle decisions and never medicate, silly. There are instances where you do need to be medicated, of course.
I apologize if it came across like that, and your accusation of me thinking in absolutes is similar to my wife's accusation.
It's dramatic. It gets her point across. It's dramatic, but yeah.
Fuck both of you guys. That being said, I would like to just push back here. I'm also not a fan of arguing people's limitations for them. And
okay.
So did you see the connection there? I'm putting in, like.
No.
Do you see the connection I'm making? Everyone can do it. Everyone's capable. And maybe there is a role for someone in society or a group of people to argue people's limitations. It's just, if I have a fault or something that I'm pretty dogmatic about, it's just, I don't want to argue anyone's limitations. I think that's a really, I think that's a sickness of the mind. I don't want to argue my own limitations. There's this Taoist saying, argue your limitations and they're yours. And it's like, yeah.
Sure. It's important to acknowledge limitations. I don't think you need to emphasize them. I don't think you need to have primary focus, but people have certain limitations. Let's say maybe diabetes is the right example, but like, I don't know, if you get someone who's paralyzed from the waist down, like, you're not going to continually try to get them to walk up the stairs. Like, there are other things that you can do and work towards, and other goals that you can use to improve their autonomy, but that's just not one of them. So that's just acknowledging a limitation, and then you still promote autonomy and advocacy and all these things, and make them into a better person overall and towards those goals. But it's just acknowledging certain limitations that people have,
or encourage them to find a different way. Encourage them to find a different way to get up the stairs. Like,
I think that's totally fine. I think.
Right.
But I think focusing on capacity versus is a great starting place. I agree with you.
Have you ever thought about a ponytail, like Con Porter, like grow your hair a little longer and pull it up, like?
Could get the Viking look going pretty soon, I think. Hey, with my red beard and long, luscious golden locks. I
don't feel like you've experimented very much. I don't think you've experimented very much with your hair.
No, you got to get to that phase, and then I have a hard time committing at that point. So I floated the idea to once, and she just said, "Nah, don't do it." So I said, "All right, whatever, I'll ditch it."
What about shaving really short? What about like a four guard?
Too lumpy, and my hair is too light, so you can kind of my hair is so light you can see right through it, so you see like my weird freckled head, and I fell on my head as a gymnast, and it would be all bumpy, and you need a nice head for that, and I don't have it, so that's why I keep the mop on top. I'm getting a haircut on Thursday before the games, though. I'm happy to report.
This always
mostly just so they'll shave my neck.
Yeah, isn't that nice when they shave your neck?
Yeah. Well, mine gets bad too. When the back comes up and merges to the neck, and then it grows around in the chest too, and I just got a full tank top of body hair. Beautiful.
You have nice body hair though. Mine's a fucking mess. Mine's a mess.
Kind of say so. You have. Do you have the grays? Do you have the chest hair?
No, I don't have any grays in any the armpits or the pubes or the chest yet. Not yet.
Oh, really?
No.
That's a good look. Keep working.
But it's all my hair is right in between my titties, and it's just it's ridiculous. Hey, your wife's name is Michelle?
Yes. My wife's name and my coach's.
Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about your coach. Damn, we're running out of time. I just think you should get your hair. I think you should try something really new with your hair this year at the games. You should go for more like an army cut. I just think it should be short. And you're showing up there, I know you're not asking my opinion, and people are gonna always hate it when I do this to you guys, but I think you should show up with a whole new, maybe the Arnold Schwarzenegger commando look, cigar in your mouth, doesn't have to be lit, super short hair, maybe some camo clothing, maybe even a tattoo. I'm not even a proponent of a tattoo, but just a whole new Vellner.
See, I think you're just conditioned to have Matt win the games. Matt shows up every year with a buzz cut and a new tattoo, and so you're like, that's what you fucking need to win the games.
Holy shit!
Why not just show up?
God,
and I just fucking win the games.
That.
However, take me. Why can't you just love me for me, man?
So you're saying that I may be a programmed drone just like everyone else. I'm just looking for stability and. Oh no.
That's right. Yeah, I know. I'm gonna try to change it for everyone. Just have some unkempt, lanky Canadian win it.
You are definitely not lanky. Go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
But how different is the preparation for the games than any other competition?
It's significantly different just because you've got a lot more touches you've got to put in. So I think for one thing, you build your volume up a little bit, and then you just do other things. I'd say more different for me this year than in previous years, the last 2 years, because the sanctionals one or two events that were maybe a little more gamesy in the way that they were. Some of them had really, whereas an online format is easy to deal with. So, preparing to compete at the Atlas Games, you focus mostly on the types of things you're going to see. And then obviously to train, you start just adding in kind of another level on things maybe a little bit of extra length in workout, a little bit of extra weight vest or something like that, mixing in odd objects a little more often, mixing in the cycling, the running. So it's a bit more out. It's often I might do my normal kind of what you said. I for an hour to get my legs ready for that. So there's a little more of that. You could think of it as kind of tacking on an extra session of just bits of volume and skill work. I didn't do many pegboards getting ready for less games, but I've been doing more now. So it's things like that. Sometimes it's just touching those skills again. And I'm fortunately in a place where I've done enough of that stuff in the last few years that it doesn't take me long to re-hone that skill. But you do need to touch it. Like, you do need to feel it. You do need to get on it. Even stuff like the pig flip. Like, I flipped a pig in 2016 at the Invitational, and I haven't touched the pig since. So, trying to simulate what that feels like, get some hands on that, remember what that feels like, is super important, because efficiency in those movements will pay dividends, right?
I think it, for me, as like a spectator who's just watching all the athletes of the year and their careers, something changes. They either present themselves, or that they're like creating the best physical version of themselves. It's like, it just, to me, it might be the touch. It's a shift in mindset. It's like, and maybe it's not as 6, 7, 8 times, but I think, like, when I think of the field showing up to games, I'm like, every single competitor that's coming here has been putting in everything they can. They qualified to make sure that this is the best version of themselves this year. And I don't necessarily think or get that feeling from all their competition.
Yeah, I think it's challenging though. So I think that there is a balance, because the trap is to always do more, and to always think more and more is better, and heavier is better. And I got to do this much heavy, and then do another Metcon. And then I think you can make the mistake of trying to pack too much. Be the best version of yourself. It also involves being well rested, well recovered. If I walk into the games and I'm beat to shit, like, you're going to struggle if you're coming into the weekend feeling like that. So, there's a lot that goes into a building phase for something like the games. But then I think your taper is really important. And that's why, my perspective, some of those skill pieces are really nice to get in as lower intensity. Sometimes, like, you put them in certain workouts, but then you do need those pieces where you're getting volume in, you're getting movement patterns dialed, but you're not necessarily just like beating up your body more and more and more. Because that's a mistake we see often. People who come in really, really tired and really flat because their prep phase lasted maybe a little too long, or was a little too much, or, I think there's a lot of open communication that has to happen between coaches and athletes. And, you need good coaches. I think if you have a coach or a team that feels like they're pushing, or you're feeling tired, and you just kind of keep showing up and keep hitting your head against the wall, it's not going to benefit anyone. So in a certain way, like, you have to know your limit a little bit, and you got to go right to it. But if you step over that line, it is hard. I think that you still in the prep phase, but you need people to show up to the games feeling ready to do damage, right? I think that if you show up to the games and you're so tired, you're just trying to finish the workouts. There's a big difference between that and having the killer instinct of trying to beat people.
Is Michelle Letendre, has she always been your coach since you've made it to the games?
My first year, she wasn't, and I started working with her after that. So in 2016 was my first year as an individual. I went with a coach that I was working with from Montreal. I was living there as a student, and that summer, so that was 2016. That summer, my partner Michelle, she was in law school, and she dropped out of law school that summer to go to med school.
Wait a second. Sorry, you were answering the question before I could ask it. She was in law school and med school?
Yeah. She only did a year of law school. Both her parents are lawyers, so I think she kind of defaulted to that. She took her LSAT and crushed it. She's very wired for that kind of thinking, but she just didn't really get it. So she was doing law school in Montreal, and then she got into med school. So that summer she dropped out, but she had to move to Calgary across the country for med school. So I was living with her in the summer, and then I ended up homeless really fast. So Michelle Letendre actually took me in, lived with her and her partner Fred for that summer for the 2016 games. So she wasn't my coach then, but I was training and living with her, and I would do some of the stuff she was doing and some of the stuff my coach would program, and she very much helped me prepare for the game here. And then we had the Invitational after that, and then and just shifted gears to coaching. So as soon as she changed coaching, coach at the time was very much stepping away from it. I think he kind of had his bucket list item. He had been some elite athletes for a while, and his item was to get somebody to the games. So I went to the games that year and I finished third, and he was perfectly content, and he had a lot of other things going on, and he just didn't have the time or energy to me at the moment. So I talked to him and I talked to Michelle, and they were both perfectly happy for the switch. So I started either late 2016 or early 2017, and I've been with her.
Yeah, so it's been, going on 5 years now that you guys have been working together, and I know other high-level athletes during that time that are no longer under her coaching. Are you the only games athlete she's coaching this year?
She has Ellie Turner from Australia as well.
Nice. And do you, in her last 18 months, it seems like there's been more shifting in competitive training environment for athletes than we've really ever seen before. Changing coaches or shifting in training instead of, and you have this kind of consistency. You've had her in your corner from your perspective. From my perspective, that's advantageous.
I think so. I think that the relationships you build are really important, and I think that it's even little things. Like I talked to her, 4 or 5 days ago. I was kind of just like, at training peak, I was running out of like emotional energy, and I was just beat down. I just like had a vent with her, and she would talk to her for a little bit, and we changed a couple of things in training to help like level myself off. I think you get to know each other. Like when I was with her at Wadapalooza, she knows my little tics and idiosyncrasies, and she knows how to deal with me when I'm stressed. She knows how I communicate my stress. It's like any relationship. Like she just know each other, how to speak to me when, and like I know the same for her, like how to ask questions in a certain way. She knows if I'm asking things a certain way, what that means. If I'm doing it another way, what that means. So I think you learn a lot about each other, and then by the end of 4 or 5 years, like things are very much dialed in. And because of that, I think that's the only way that remote coaching works well. I've spent tons of period with her, like months at a time training. So when it is time to be remote, I know what she means when she says certain things, and you don't need those eyes on all the time. Obviously, if I could have that, I would love it, but I have family and other people in my life that would stop me from just up and reeling to just go train. So that's the best way to do it for me. And I think training by myself has always worked for me. I think camps are great, and I think they're a good they're really beneficial short term, but I wouldn't want to do that all the time. I think that from my perspective, there's a high risk of burnout with some of those training camps where, instead of training, you start to actively compete against your partners every day. And I think that, you got to be really cool with that stimulus. And again, coaches need to be very aware of it. But you have to really control, because people start competing every day. Like imagine being at the CrossFit Games stimulus every day for even 3 weeks, like you would fall apart, right? Concerned about injuries and things like that. So that's why I think
Patrick, are you injury free?
I'm about as injury free as I've been in a long time, I'd say. Everybody's got little bumps and bruises, but that's the way it works. Nobody gets out alive training for the games. So I think I'm happy with that.
I think the other couple nuances that are really good for you in this situation is, at the games, things change quickly. Find out an event or an extra event or, just whatever that's presented to you in a limited amount of time to process it. And that experience that you guys can draw on, and the fact that there's not a distraction of having 4 or 5 different people that are there, both of those things probably lend it to have the necessary communication in the limited based on all those years of experience.
Yeah, honestly too, I think my goal, I hope that they stop announcing shit for games, to be honest. I hate when they give us all this fucking information. It's so annoying, because I don't know, I'll prepare as well as the next guy if I have the information, but I think a lot. Like, so I drum things around in my head, and I visualize, and I make plans, and I visualize every scenario that could play out. And so sometimes I need to like turn my brain off a little more. I'm not great at it sometimes. So the less information I have, the less I can do that. And I do have enough experience that I'm confident and comfortable that if I had to step on the floor and do it one shot, it would be fine. But when I start to think a lot about every possible outcome in situations, it just takes time to think through all those scenarios. So I prefer that I don't have to do that. I've caught myself in various competitions over the years being like, dude, you just need to like fucking relax and do it. So we'll see. I hope that they keep it down. But
no, you've proven that in the events you've done best at the games too are oftentimes the ones where it's the person who can react the quickest to the situation, or not think and just do.
Yeah,
Patrick,
trying not to follow my head on the events this year.
What is the best event in the ecosystem? Are the CrossFit Games still the best event in the ecosystem?
They're definitely up there. Like it's great. There's not a lot of events that are on that same level. I'd say that I've done in the last few years, depends on what you look at. But Wodapalooza has done really well the last couple years I've been there. Where I feel like the competition fields and venues are almost more immersed in the festival than they are at the games. And the games, it really feels like, there's like the vendor area. I've never seen the vendor area in Madison. So it's so separate from where the athletes go. Yeah. And you're a little bit more segregated. So you don't feel like you're, in the community or involved in the event in some ways, whereas some you really are a little bit more a part of the structure of it.
No, don't forget they walked you through the beer garden one year.
They've done it a few years.
That's awesome when they do that. You guys are
it is
all the beer you can't drink.
People alive, and you're walking through this.
What's great?
I kind of like it. It's a great juxtaposition.
I like it too, and it was funny because depending on how we walked in and out of the Coliseum that way, so depending on how the event went, on the way back, you would be like, either that vibe walking through there was like, yeah, like the shit. People be like high-fiving you just crushed it, or you just got and you fucking just like you're like head down walking through there. People are it was like walking through the tunnel in the away game, right? People just fucking ooh. But I was yeah, I actually like that too. I don't know if they'll do it the same this year, but they've done it in the last few years. Yeah, I thought that was funny. Yeah, the energy in there is really hilarious.
What's the harshest thing Michelle Letandra's ever said to you? By harsh, I don't mean like in rude or like would she ever say to you, like final event, like if you said to her, oh, this is a long day, and right before you go out for an event, would she ever say to you, don't be a pussy, Pat? Like does she ever like have to like just step on your dick and you wake up and you're like, oh yeah, don't be a pussy, go? Or like, I just use that as an example. Is there anything where she has to slap you around ever?
She does all the time. Like she,
okay, good.
And I think because I'm a bit of a complainer sometimes over little things, or I'll be like stressed over small details, and so she's just trying to communicate to me how insignificant the detail that I'm stressed about is, right? And so sometimes sometimes it's in training. I'll ask questions of work because I think it's like, this is clearly over programmed. Like, I don't know, what is this actually you meant to write? And she'll just like text me back something like, well, are you the fittest guy in the world or not? And you're like, well, okay. And so,
okay, awesome.
And she's very matter of fact. Like, I think one of the best lines ever was like, you do an open workout, or I forget when it was, maybe like quarterfinals or something, and finish workout, and you're like, how'd it go? Like it was fine. I did this and this. I feel like I made a mistake here. I could have gone faster here. And she'll just say something like, if you could have gone faster, you would have. And then like, ooh, that's it. End of the conversation. And you're like, well, okay. You're probably right. I didn't slow down because I felt like it would be more fun that way. Like, yeah, you clearly were redlining, and there's a reason why things went the way they went. So it'd be like, yeah, if you could have gone faster, you would have. Well, that's it. We're in training, period. Like, okay.
Sounds like a great relationship.
Sometimes I think it's almost a language barrier where like she's so point blank on the way she said, like, that didn't mean to come off the way it did. But then remember that her English is actually very, very good. So I think just actually was meant to be communicated the way it was.
She knows exactly what she's saying.
Yeah, exactly. But again, like that's our relationship, and she knows that that's like how I need to hear things. And I don't. And I think that to her credit, she's very good at that. Like you said, she's had several other notable games athletes, and I've seen the way that she coaches and interacts with them. She deals with her athletes differently based on their needs and their personalities, right? And I think that that's a hallmark of a good coach, that they don't treat everybody the same. It's not like, hey, here's my style. If you mesh with me, you can be one of my athletes. Like she understands that athletes have different needs, and she's very good at that. So, you know, I'm used to our relationship, and then sometimes I see the way she coddles somebody else, and I get jealous. But you know, it's the way it is. I'm just the old guy in the stable.
One last question I really wanted to ask you before we.
Does it have Travis Mayer involved in it?
It does have Travis Mayer involved in it.
Good.
Travis Mayer and Pat, of 12 men in the games field this year who are 30 years old. And last year, Matt Frazier was the first guy at 30 years or older since 2012. Is this a year that we're going to see 230 plus for the first time in 9 years? There's a huge contingency.
I think so. I'd be curious to see how much that stat has increased in the last couple of years. 12 people this year. Because, you know, I think, again, you know, I'm not illusioned. Like, we are getting older, and there are some athletes coming in who are young and exceptional. But in the last lot of years, you know, it's been interesting. Like, we've all grown up together. Like, since I remember in 2016, when I first went to the games and finished third, we were all of us on the podium. Ben, Matt, and I were all 26. And then the next year, like, you know, us, like BKG's like a year younger. Like, a lot of those same names all show up on the podium again. It's like Matt and Brent and I in 2017. Brent's 30. Half a year younger than me or something like that. So, you know, then, and every year it's been a lot of the same names who've just been getting older together, but still finishing near the top of the pile. Right. So eventually it's going to change, of course, but I joke about it. Like, you know, these kids can take a run, but we're not getting out of the way. I don't know BKG, Scott Panchik. I don't see anybody fucking rolling over for anybody.
Is Hopper delusional? Talking about first place?
I don't know. I've never met him, but I'm going to spin his head around, I bet you, this next weekend.
Right, and it does feel like we're getting close to 26, 26, 27, 26, 27, 28, 28, 26, 30.
It's the same age.
21.
It's the same,
well, that was
the same
last year was
every
that
year.
shift, but it was a little different. So this is a telling year to me. Are we going to see Medeiros and Hopper somehow on the podium and the youth movement coming, or are the Olsons, BKGs, Fikowskis, Vellner, Panchiks, Mayers, got to include Mayer on the list, going to continue to exert?
And, you know, here's the thing. I'm not going to say, like, oh, it's going to be fucking dominant. Like, we're going to be dunking all Justin Medeiros. They're not even going to know what happened. But that the pedigree of a lot speaks for itself. And I think that, like I said, those exceptions. Jason Hopper's semifinal was outstanding. And, like, think notice it. But, you know, I just have a lot of faith in my ability and the ability of my other peers. And I think that it's going to be a best of the year, and it's going to be really fun to see. But if the question is, do I think there will be 30 or 30 plus year old people on the podium? I think there's a very good chance. But I think that there's also a good chance you see one of those guys at least on the podium. You know, as good a chance as any. Like, those guys are exceptionally skilled and they have extraordinarily. But do I think that, like, Justin Medeiros going and rowing with Matt Zurich make a big difference? No.
You know what I wish I could see? It's so bummed I can't see it. I love the dynamics in the back, the pecking order in the back. You know, while you guys are like warming up or cooling down or at the ice baths, like who's talking to who, Matt or is it Fikowski and Vellner? Is it Vellner and Matt? Is it Josh Bridges and Patrick? I loved like seeing like how sort of these informal cliques, like people would hang out, and I would love to see this year who gravitates towards you, sort of as you being the new big dick in town. And so
it'll be interesting. It'll start on Monday. We have a dinner. We have a dinner on Monday, and we'll see what the table arrangement looks like. But a lot of times that just, you know, right? Like, especially right now when we've seen each other in live competition, you sort of just like are trying to rekindle connections with your buddies. But it'll be fun to see. I mean, I usually try to come in with like the smallest dick energy possibly can, and just throw everybody off guard.
But you know what I mean? Like, you don't see the last place guy over there doing cool, like if I can just see the assault bikes, you know, and cool down, and it would be like Josh Bridges, Ben Smith, and Matt Frazier all cooling down together. And granted, right, they might have been in the same heats or not, but there is sort of a it takes there's a different demeanor around the guys who are in the top 10 hanging out in the corral than some of the lower rank guys, except for, you know, a few exceptions. You know, there's some people who just seem seamless everywhere, but with the men, I just feel like there's like, these are the bulls that are going to get the cow first and the rest of you aren't. Like,
yeah, I think there's a confidence that goes with that, right? And I don't see guys like Jason and Dustin, I think, are very confident athletes. So I don't think that they're going to be too bad. Hopper's creeped in my. Maybe I'll sit with him.
Yeah, you guys are just talking about.
Yeah, maybe I won't meet. I'm sit at my table.
Oh, that would be great.
No,
Mean Girls, and that'd be awesome.
It'll be fun. I'm actually really looking forward to the way the landscape of the competition field has changed, because even for me, like I said, it's been 18 months since I've been at a live. So, you know, it's since I've been competed a full game schedule. So the competition field's different, right? Like, old boys in there, and there's a lot of young guys coming up. So it's cool. I think even on the women's side, you know, seeing athletes like Emma Carey and Al O'Brien be so successful is like, it's super fun. But like I said, I don't think this sun on operation yet.
No, because I didn't.
And the
even
pressure
include,
will be.
didn't even include Cole Sager and Will Morad, Tim Paulson, Royce. I have a lot of guys 30 plus, Roy Gamboa, Jason Smith, that are still very.
Jason Smith is like 60 plus.
Almost. I love that guy. He's such a legend.
He is a legend.
I remember at the Invitational, I'll tell a quick story about Jason Smith. The Invitational in Melbourne in 2017, we were like, it's waiting for dressing. I just like got chatting with him, or I'll just kind of killing time until everybody can go in and pee. And I know he used to race motocross, and just like your friend Travis Mann. But I started just asking him, like, oh, motocross is gnarly, and Forte, he used to race motocross, and they kind of get comparing injuries, right? And Forte's got like he finished some race like with a broken ankle once, like his ankle in the middle of a race, and then finished the whole thing. And Jason's like, oh man, like I've got a few good ones, and goes through the list, and he turned his handlebars in the air and basically like pitchforked himself. And he ruptured his spleen like completely, and had to like go in his kidney, and he got like half his spleen removed and one kidney or something. And we were sitting there like, wait, so you've only got one kidney? Like, whoa, like what? And he like shows us his big ass scar. He's a gnarly dude. And it was just like, he's like, oh yeah, like he loved it. He was so sweet. But yeah, just completely crushed himself doing motocross, got like half his organs removed.
You can only imagine what his spine looks like after an accident like that.
He's gnarly, man. I love Jason. I'm excited he made it back. I'm pumped to see him. He's a pretty gritty dude for, what is he, 37?
Yeah, yep. I think so.
Jeez.
He's oldest guy for sure in the field.
Probably by a few years. to look that good when I'm 37.
Me too.
Joshua was 36 and had qualified, but he's unable to make the trip. So
Right.
Roy Gamboa is the next up at 34.
Hey, does that
Right.
freak all? So, when you have a bunch of married couples together, like, you know, like the same married, like there's 6 married couples and you guys all hang out together like once a month or, you know, whatever, like you roll in the same circles, same CrossFit gym, whatever. And then one married couple gets a divorce, or like the husband cheats on the wife or the wife cheats on the husband. There's this instability that like ripples through the group, right? It's like really, it's kind of crazy. Like everyone's like, oh shit. Like, and everyone kind of does like a check of their own relationship. Is my husband cheating on me? Is my wife cheating on me? Maybe I should get a divorce. You know, like it opens up this possibilities of ideas. Is it like that in the CrossFit community when someone pops for drugs and then they're like, they say something like, yeah, I got a bad piece of meat from Australia, or God, my protein was tainted. Do you ever, whenever anyone tests positive, or you go in your fucking cupboard and start looking around and be like, okay, what the fuck am I eating? Like double down on checking to make sure, and like, hey, I'm not.
I think it makes you sit up straight there for a second. That's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, you've been taking like you've been tested on that stuff. That's good, but then you just like, yeah, it makes you second guess stuff. It makes you just be like, oh. You know, like, did I eat anything weird, or did I go anywhere weird? Or you double check we have to send our whereabouts for drug-free sport. You like double check that to make sure you don't have any like updates that you forgot to notify them about. Cause it's terrible for sure. I mean, in the last week or so, we've seen like 4 teams get disqualified. And it's a shame. Like, I don't know, it always sucks to see. And I think you know, everybody's biggest fear is that happening to them. So regardless of like how careful you always are, I think you get into it. So I take and then, you know, that happens, you kind of snap to everything, like, and then you go, okay, cool. We're all good. We're all still good. And then, you know, you carry forward, but it's stressful. I still always feel like every time you take a drug test, it's like you could be as confident as you want, but when you finally get like a notification that your drug test was good, there's a little bit of relax, and you're just like, oh, okay, foo, you're like your butt unpuckers a little bit. Yeah,
it's like getting a virgin to get an STD test. Like, I remember the first time I got like some sort of like AIDS test or STD test. I can't remember. I was a virgin. I didn't lose my virginity until I was 18. But I remember being like, oh shit, what if I have AIDS? And I'm like, well, I can't have fucking AIDS unless my hand gave it to myself. Like, but still, you're still nervous.
Because you can get STIs or from, you know, other actions or blood interaction, you know, like there's other ways you can get it. So similar thing, like as much as I really feel like a lot of those tainted meat excuses and blah, blah, blah are really a lot of blowing smoke, you know, it makes you be like a little bit stressed when you're like, I don't know, could something of that happen to me? Like conceivably, because it's not really in your control that much. But anyway, it's very stressful. And I think every time it happens, yeah, you do a quick systems check, or you should, or, you know, you fire an email to somebody at Drug-Free Sport and you ask a couple questions and you make sure everything's up to code. But yeah, it sucks. I mean, like the recent suspensions and stuff, it sucks. We're so close to the games. Like, my biggest hope is that they're able to fill the spot who are eligible and deserve to go, because it would be a shame to, you know, compete with 4 less teams at the games because 4 teams popped with like a week before the games, and then you couldn't get people together to go. And then a team
worse is if someone popped at the games and then if someone who was supposed to be on the podium didn't get to enjoy that moment.
Sure.
Well, the best example of that is 2019 when Danielle Brandon didn't make the top 10 because one of the athletes from the top 10 tested positive after the fact. So she missed half of her games and would have been in the top 10 as a rookie, you know, and what does that mean for like exposure sponsorships, all that kind of stuff. Those things like have consequences,
2017, right? When you didn't get to go on the podium. That's what I was referencing.
Oh, I worry more about other people than myself.
You're a good dude. You're a good dude.
He's dealt with that.
Yeah, that's right. I feel like that's so far in the rear view. I got to get ready for Ricky to next year.
Oh, you
Is it
think he's
weird
coming
that
back?
is it strange? Actually excited for him to come back.
No, I don't think so.
I'm excited.
Dude, it
reason
adds energy to the event. It adds so much energy to the event. It's great.
The reason I'm excited is because I think that even clean competing in a competition, and I want the best guys there.
Yeah, he'll be good. I think it'll be dramatic. I'm interested to see what the reception is like.
I can't wait to do the podcast with both of you on at the same time. That'll be fun.
Yeah, it would be fun. I see he still has never said a word to me since then.
Oh, he hasn't?
No.
Dude, that, you know,
Ricky, dude, get in Vellner's DMs and send him a DM. Be like, dude, sorry I fucked you on the podium. Come on, man.
someone
like
was
Ricky.
telling me the other national golf that Bryson DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka, like they do multiple times denied first round pairings with you.
Sunday,
They have to be in first and second or third and fourth or whatever. They'll have to play together. And that might be you and Ricky next year.
Yeah, and that's fine. I'll compete against him, but I'll be honest. I have no love lost for a cheater, and I don't. It won't be a warm reception from my side. And I think that if he's clean and he just have another shot to come back, but I think particularly given that he has a positive test. His brother now has two, one of which was a year after Ricky was this.
Doesn't look good for those guys, and I think that they just, I don't know what they're doing, but clearly their
Priorities are, weird for me.
I do, and it's just, I don't think we'll be friends.
No, and that's totally fair.
I think you will be. I do.
We'll see. Maybe it'll give me
A
a
nice gift.
You're a good dude. You're the only dude who's used altruistic you're the only person who's used the word altruistic in one of my podcasts, and so I think you'll surprise yourself.
Really? What do you got? Like 80
Patrick,
episodes?
thank you. 1040. That was good. You the man. You gave us a lot of time. I appreciate it. I have another huge favor to ask you before you hang up.
No, that's all good. I got my family's out. Can't
Oh man, his internet's going out.
stay home and exercise.
What did he say? What did
So I had nothing but
Don't know.
Patrick, say that one more time.
Oh, I said
I got nothing but time for you guys this morning because my family.
Oh, he can't hang up though yet because we got a little problem. Patrick, whatever you do, don't
And I just didn't work out.